Hello, I'm David R. Lewis. Welcome to Heartland Memories here at Theater of the Mind. This memory is around 40 years old and no bull. Well, actually, that's not true. It is bull. Sort of. You'll see. Leslie Hallcraft smiled at me as he reached over the top rail of a board fence and scratched the back of an immense Charolais bull. "This is Baby," he beamed. "He's just as sweet as he can be, yes he is." Les was my landlord. In the outback of the Ozarks, Laura and I had rented a 2-bedroom rock house from Les and his wife, complete with a barn and paddock for some pigs, a spring-fed catfish pond, and access to 600 acres of trees to cut wood for the furnace in the house. Les was a nice man, a converted northerner who drove an International Harvester pickup truck and swatted wasps the way mere mortals swat mosquitoes, often sustaining 24 stings a day. He was introducing me to his prize bull, a bull nearly as expensive as an aircraft carrier, a bull he loved more than his children, a bull he'd installed in a pasture completely surrounding the barn and paddock where I kept pigs, a bull that was now going to be between me and where I needed to go several times a day. My mouth went dry. "You can see how gentle my little baby is," he said, easing through the stile and into the pasture. I followed warily behind, mentally constructing my last will and testament. The bull, only slightly smaller than a 56-passenger school bus, sidled up to him to get his ribs scratched. "This precious boy wouldn't hurt a flea," Les continued, clawing away at the animal's hide as if trying to dig through a dusty carpet. He eyed the small barn 60 yards out into the pasture. "You just come and go as you please. Baby'll leave you alone, won't you, baby?" The bull shifted his massive weight in pleasure from the scratching and fixed me with a baleful eye. I could clearly see the visions of my torn and bleeding body that danced in his twisted imagination. Over the years, I'd been knocked down by bulls, knocked around by bulls, stepped on by bulls, thrown over fences by bulls, and slammed into walls by bulls. I have been covered in bull sweat, bull spit, bull snot, and well, you get the idea. Bulls are immense, straight-ahead, single-minded, powerful creatures. Because I am a Taurus, I admire them. Because I am sane, I'm scared of them. Baby may have been all sweetness and light to Les Hallcraft, but to me, he was just another chunk of fear, a clear and present danger, and he was in a pasture that I had to pass through at least 3 times every 24 hours. Like the dog owner explaining how little Fido would never bite anyone as the crazed canine has his fangs in your fetlock, Les seemed totally unaware of my feeble protests about having his bull in the way. He actually seemed rather pleased that I was going to get an opportunity to become personally acquainted with Baby, that I would soon come to love the dear bovine as much as he did. Baby would only be there for 10 days or so while Les and his wife went to California on vacation. The hired man would take care of everything at the big farm while they were gone, but he'd brought the bull back to the old home place so I could check on him every day. He just didn't know what he'd do if anything happened to Baby. Since I had to go into the barn in that pasture regularly, and since the pasture was just 50 feet or so from the house, it would be no trouble at all for me to keep an eye on his beloved bull. He simply would not recognize the fact that his Charolais was a crazed killer waiting to grind out my life beneath cloven hooves the size of manhole covers. The next morning, I eased quietly out the back door. Baby was 70 yards away on the opposite side of the barn. I slipped through the stile, trotted to the rear of the small barn, lifted open a chest-high trap-style door, and wiggled my way inside. Safe! I was cleaning up the farrowing crate around a sow and a litter of pigs when I heard Laura drive away for a day of errands at a town 30 miles distant. For the next hour or so, I fussed around inside the barn, Baby still out front, on the opposite side of the structure from the house. All was well. Maybe Les was right. Maybe this was the one bull on the planet that did not have designs on my life. A quick duck out the back trap door, a jog to the fence, and I would be home free. I walked to the rear of the barn, swung the door open, and there stood the bull. He looked at me, lowered his 55-gallon head, and shook it from side to side. A 2-foot trail of mucus whipped out of his nose. Okay. I walked to the front of the barn and out into the fenced paddock. Baby was waiting. and he paced me as I walked the enclosure. Over the next 2 hours, we repeated that performance several times. The horrible truth began to dawn on me. I was trapped. With my wife gone for the day, there was no one around to even distract the bull while I made a getaway. Besides, I had business in the barn every day, livestock that depended on me. I paid the rent. The bull was the interloper, not me. I had a right to be there. Anger began to build in my fear-choked mind. The reptile portion of my brain started to writhe and shudder. No half-witted 2,000-pound walking hamburger patty was going to dictate my business to me. All the rage against all the bulls that had misused me in my life came to the forefront. Red-eyed and sweaty-toothed, I looked for a weapon. There, against the wall, leaned a 4-foot length of 2-inch plumbing pipe, a bludgeon of heroic proportions. Good. My Norse ancestry sang through my veins. I could almost hear the sound of cold steel striking cold steel on the shore of the misty isles. I felt the urge to scream, "Odin!" to the distant stars. Instead, clutching the piece of pipe, I boldly strode to the rear of the barn and opened the door. There he was, Baby the bull, waiting on me. He shook his head and issued a grumble similar to the sound of a toilet backing up. I ran to the front of the barn and out into the paddock. Sure enough, Baby came loping around the corner. Perfect. I ran back to the rear, then back to the front, then back to the rear, then back to the front, then back to the rear again, and stayed there. Baby, caught up in the game, headed back to the front. When I heard him go, I rolled out the chest-high door, pipe in hand, and took up my batter's stance at the edge of the barn. When the bull came barreling around the corner, I committed my soul to Thor, swung the pipe, and took him high and outside with a shot that would have gone downtown in Yankee Stadium. Baby dropped like a stone. Had I killed him, I would have been homeless and owed Les Hallcraft more money than I made in 5 years. But I didn't. I thought I did. For a while, Baby lay there for nearly 2 hours before he got to his feet and wobbled off. Several days later, Les pulled up, freshly back from California, as I was walking from the barn to the house. Baby, again all sweetness and light, scampered up to greet him. As I approached, however, the bull backed off 20 feet or so and calmly waited. "Well, that's strange," Les said. "He just moved away from you." "Well, he's been like that since the day after you left," I said. "Oh, maybe he thinks you don't like him," Hallcraft mused. Controlling my grin, I replied, "I wonder what could have given him that idea." That's how it seems to me. I'm David R. Lewis. Thanks for visiting a Heartland Memory here on Theater of the Mind.